Oh, hello there. I didn't expect company. Probably because you're trespassing. I'm pretty sure I was the only one who had access to the Spooked in Seattle Death Museum after hours. But since you're already here, stay, because there's a few things that I would like to discuss. A lot of you out there might recognize me from the hit web series Insomnia, in which we talk about all sorts of paranormal activity from the categories that I call the Big Five. That is, cryptozoology, UFOs and extraterrestrials, government conspiracies, bizarre unexplained events in nature, and of course, ghosts and hauntings. Because we here at Insomnia have always prided ourselves on one of two things. Well, you're either going to be up late at night thinking about this stuff, or we're just going to plain scare you. I'm your host, Adrian Ladelia, and this is Insomnia.
We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
I was just doing some light reading here. An old Gothic grimoire. Did you know that grimoire is actually derived from the old French word grammaire, which meant grammar, and was the term applied to any textbook concurrently written in Latin during the Middle Ages? Grimoires can be found all throughout antiquity, from the Middle East to Western civilizations. They were considered, and still are by many, essentially textbooks of magic, casting spells and incantations, creating amulets and talismans. Oftentimes, these books would need to be cryptically designed, or else the Catholic Church at the time would find out what you were up to, and, well, let's just say they had a pretty good system at dealing with people who practiced magic. Famous examples include The Lesser Key of Solomon, a series of texts from the 17th century detailing demonology, the Grand Grimoire, also known as the Book of the Red Dragon, which supposedly contains the original contract in which to sell your soul to the devil himself. And finally, the 3 books of occult philosophy, all of which contain comprehensive knowledge on elemental, celestial, and intellectual magic. Many would consider this one the holy grail of grimoires. If any of these catch your interest, well, worry not. We will be discussing them in future episodes. But today, we're going to be discussing a different kind of book. A supposedly fictional grimoire that brings us back to 1924, born from the writings of one of horror's most influential minds, H.P. Lovecraft. We are talking about the Necronomicon, a tome so dreaded that one of the book's supposed origins, a madman named Abd al-Hasred, simply titled the book Kitab al-Asif, which is said to roughly translate from Arabic into the howling of the desert insects, which was interpreted to be something much more sinister than one would believe, for it heralded the approach of Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, pure and utter evil. So now we need to look deeper into the mystery of the Necronomicon and ask ourselves, is it fact or fiction? The Necronomicon is a dark manuscript containing ancient magic and secrets. Known throughout the Western world as the Book of the Dead. If we take what Lovecraft said as fact, then we are left to believe that the book is merely a work of fiction conceived for his gothic horror mythos. However, let's take a look at the supposed testament of this mad Arab, which many have come to believe may have been more real than we had previously thought. Supposedly, the Necronomicon was composed of all that this madman had witnessed. So let us see the beginning of how this all came to pass.
This is the testimony of all I have seen. May Anu have mercy on my soul. I wandered through the mountains of Mashu, the moonlight guiding my thoughts and path. I was searching for an answer to my spirit's unending questions when I overheard voices faintly over the desert wind. I climbed to the top of the ridge and witnessed something I can never forget. Priests gathered around a glowing obelisk, and from beneath this stone there came the tails of serpents, much larger than any I have ever seen. In horror, I let out a scream which disrupted their ritual, and they had turned to face me. So I fled, as fast as my feet could take me, though my heart nearly burst from fear. One of the priests had managed to seize me, and I fought with all my strength. Anu, protect me! I had not meant to kill a man, and like a fool, I hurried down the cliffside to approach the body of the priest. Upon reaching him, however, there was no body, no blood, only the dark robes remained.
Many people believe that the story's trail ends right there. The book is simply a work of fiction concocted by a writer who needed a plot device. However, it wasn't until 1947 that someone drew yet another interesting parallel. A famous British occultist known as Kenneth Grant noticed a connection no one had yet drawn. Grant was the apprentice of arguably the most famous Western occultist to have ever lived, Aleister Crowley, who believed he was a prophet sent to guide humanity into a new golden age. He founded the Ordo Templi Orientis, which meant the Order of the Temple of the East, one of the most iconic occult fraternities. Grant had believed that whatever dark and unconscious forces that Crowley had been channeling in the 1920s was the same exact force that Lovecraft was also channeling. Indeed, Lovecraft himself stated that a lot of his stories and inspiration came from his nightmares and dreams. So what kind of dark forces could they have been tapping into? Could Abdal Hasret have been more than just a fictional character? Perhaps he himself did exist and was subconsciously brought to life by Lovecraft's pen. Either way, Kenneth Grant was convinced that the connection was real, and whatever these forces at play were, they had given Crowley the power of the mind, and Lovecraft the power of the written word. An interesting connection between the two prominent figures, but surely one might simply write it off as coincidence. After all, stranger things have happened. Then, in 1977, the mystery deepened even further when a mysterious author published another version of the infamous text. Simply known as Simon's Necronomicon, the book immediately became accessible and known to the entire world, supposedly containing forgotten names of elder gods and old malice that still haunts the dark recesses of the universe. The public once again had their curiosity for the unknown piqued. Many have criticized the book as merely being a simple work of fiction playing off the notoriety associated with it. However, Looking deeper into the contents, we find something much more intriguing. Simon has seemingly compiled a grimoire filled to the brim with ancient incantations and mythology associated with real ancient cultures. Throughout the pages are the names of gods of the old world, from the very cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia. Simon breathes life into these antiquated spirits, gods from the Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian lore, all of which do in fact exist in historical reference. Many occultists have even warned of dabbling with the contents of this book, as the pages contain advanced magic that is not for the inexperienced. Many have even wondered as to where this mysterious Simon had collected these works. Perhaps he too was channeling the same dark forces we have been describing. So how is this all connected? Well, many spiritualists believe in what are known as the Akashic records, which are a sort of energetic imprint that is stored in a non-physical plane, most often called the astral plane, or a spiritual realm, if you will. The idea is that every thought, emotion, idea, etc. is encoded and stored in this vast energetic library of information. Many even believe that anyone can access these records using a myriad of techniques, such as meditation or astral projection, which is leaving your physical body and entering this realm. It is said that since everything has been stored here since the beginning of time, there could be information that we as humans simply could not comprehend. Perhaps also evil thoughts and truths that could be stored here as well. Could those hidden truths be the same ones that both Aleister Crowley and H.P. Lovecraft were unconsciously tapping into? Well, some people say that you can inadvertently astrally project in your sleep. Lovecraft did mention his nightmares and dreams being inspiration. Crowley spent much time in ritual and meditative tantric ceremonies, so perhaps he too could have been accessing these places as well. We may never know. So the mystery of the Necronomicon lives on, or for some, it's still just a work of fiction. However, a lot of people believe that given enough time, a story can eventually take on a life of its own. What once could have just been a fictionary account can eventually end up being retold as legend. The Book of the Dead, as many people call it, will continue to intrigue us for many years to come. Speaking of Book of the Dead, did you know that the concept of a Book of the Dead actually extends to many cultures around the globe? Indeed, many people are familiar with the ancient Egyptian text, which is actually known as the Book of Emerging Forth into Light. The text details instructions on how to overcome trials and tribulations that one's soul would face after death in order to see if they would prosper in the afterlife. A famous story of this book is how one's heart would be weighed against a feather before the god Anubis. Other examples include the Bardo Thodol, or the liberation through hearing during the intermediate state, which is, of course, an ancient Buddhist text, which was meant to guide the soul of the dying through the process of death and into rebirth. Finally, there is the Ars Moriendi, the art of the craft of dying, which was a late Middle Ages text, designed to guide people through the process as well, and how, of course, to die a good Christian death. So all in all, we are left with a lot of questions. I feel we've honestly raised more than we've answered. Did you know that due to the fact that most grimoires were written in code and secret ways, like I had mentioned earlier, that most of them actually remain untranslatable? Yes, there are many texts that were discovered from all sorts of eras that are seemingly written in code, untranslatable with potentially valuable information hidden away forever. Famous examples include the Book of Soiga, a 16th century manuscript which is said to be able to communicate directly with the angels, if only one could just solve the riddles inside. The Voynich manuscript, another manuscript dated to the 15th century that's actually written in an indecipherable language, depicting all sorts of bizarre imagery and text. Many even believe this book may hold the key to immortality. Of course, these are not the only examples. Countless amounts of information has been lost over the course of history or just plain hidden away by the powers that be. The infamous burning of the Library of Alexandria comes to mind, along with the secret archives of the Vatican. What possible secrets could be hidden away from us, just outside our reach? We may never know, but I do know this. The mysteries live on, and we here at Insomnia will continue to pursue them. I'm your host, Adrian Ladelia, and this is Insomnia.